Mail order bride rejected at the train station, but fate had other plans. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. The train hissed like a snake, warning her away. As it pulled away from the station, leaving behind only smoke and silence, Margaret Eloise Quinn clutched the handle of her worn valise and tried to smile. Her boots crunched on fresh snow, and the cold slipped under her cloak like an uninvited ghost. Cedar Hollow, Montana, wasn't what she imagined. The town was smaller, quieter, and lonelier than it had been in the letters. But then so was she. Margaret had journeyed from Pennsylvania with one suitcase, 3 letters, and all the dreams a heart could carry. Her new life was supposed to begin here, in this frontier town nestled between pine-covered hills and windswept ridges. She had come to marry Mr. Franklin Rourke, a man whose words on paper had been as gentle as spring rain. "You sound like someone with real spirit," he'd written. "I've had my share of thin ladies with thinner souls. I want a wife with warmth. A woman who knows how to make a house into a home." It was the first time in years she'd felt wanted, needed, seen. She had replied with trembling fingers, trying not to sound too eager. She told him she could cook, sew, and read aloud with a fine voice. She did not speak of her figure, though. What was there to say? No man had ever loved her curves. They merely tolerated them until they didn't. But Franklin's letters had made her believe she could belong somewhere. Be more than the spinster aunt. Be someone's partner. She had spent her savings on the ticket, worn her best dress under her coat, even sewed a tiny sachet of lavender into her hem for courage. Now she waited on the snowy platform, watching for a familiar face. A man with strong shoulders and silver-streaked hair. He had sent a daguerreotype once, a proud chin and soft eyes. Then she saw him. He stood just beyond the platform, talking to another man. When their eyes met, he hesitated. Margaret waved. Franklin frowned. His eyes moved down her figure, taking in the broad hips, the full cheeks beneath her bonnet, the shape her coat couldn't hide. He approached slowly. "You're Miss Quinn." Her smile faltered. "Yes, Mr. Rourke. It's good to finally meet." He exhaled hard, glancing sideways at his friend, who raised a brow. "You didn't mention your size," he said bluntly. "I didn't think it mattered," she replied, her voice brittle. Franklin gave a small laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "It does. You don't look like your handwriting." The words felt like a slap. "I was honest in my letters," she whispered. "Maybe, but you weren't honest about this. I can't marry you, Miss Quinn. You said you wanted warmth." "I didn't mean that literally," he snapped. Silence settled around them, broken only by the flurry of wind and the screech of the train's wheels fading into the hills. Margaret's cheeks burned despite the cold. Franklin turned back to his friend. "Let's go." He didn't even say goodbye. She stood there, stunned, until her fingers went numb. The train was gone. The town stared from behind frosted windows. And she, Margaret Eloise Quinn, who had dared to dream, was utterly, heartbreakingly alone. The next few hours were a blur. She wandered through Cedar Hollow in a daze, dragging her trunk behind her. Every door she passed was closed. A dog barked. A shopkeeper gave her a pitying look but said nothing. She finally found a bench behind the church and sat beneath a frost-covered tree, tears streaking her cheeks. Her stomach ached with hunger. Her feet throbbed. The lavender sachet in her hem was soaked with melted snow. That night, she found shelter in an abandoned barn. The air smelled of hay and old wood. She curled up beside a stack of empty crates and prayed the wind wouldn't find her. It did. By morning, her lips were blue and her bones ached. Her dream was dead, but she was alive. Barely. The town carpenter found her that way. Jonas Calhoun was a quiet man, built like the mountains around him, steady and enduring. He lived alone, worked with his hands, and spoke only when silence had nothing more to say. He was delivering a repaired door to the parsonage when he spotted the figure in the barn. A soaked woman, half-frozen, sleeping beside crates like a forgotten thing. He knelt beside her. Her eyes fluttered open. "Please." "I'm not a thief," she rasped. "I know." Jonas gave her his coat and lifted her with arms that had carried timber and iron. She weighed less than her heartbreak. He didn't ask questions. He just took her home. Jonas's cabin sat at the edge of town, surrounded by cedar and snow. It was small but warm. A pot of stew simmered on the stove, and a quilt lay folded on a rocker near the hearth. Margaret stared at the flames, wrapped in a blanket she didn't deserve. Jonas stirred the pot and said nothing. After a long silence, she spoke. "I came here to be a wife." He didn't turn around. "Most people come here wanting something." He rejected me. Jonas nodded, slow. "Figured as much. You don't even know me. I know what cold does to a body. And what cruelty does to a soul." She looked at him. His beard was flecked with gray, his eyes tired but kind. "Why are you helping me?" Jonas shrugged. "'Cause I've been left in the snow too." She stayed for a week. At first, she tried not to intrude. She swept the floor, washed dishes, mended a curtain. Then, slowly, she began to hum as she worked. Jonas started to notice things. How she folded his shirts with care, how she laughed quietly at his dog's antics, how she added rosemary to the stew and made it taste like memory. They didn't talk much, but something unspoken settled between them, safe and fragile. One day, she stood at the door, ready to leave. "I should go," she said. "Go where?" Jonas asked, hammering a hinge. "I don't know. Anywhere." He looked up. "You've got nowhere to go. And no one waiting. "No," she whispered. He nodded. "Then stay." Spring came slowly, brushing the hills with green. Margaret planted herbs by the window. She read books by lamplight. She sewed new curtains and baked bread that filled the cabin with life. Jonas, in return, carved a wooden chest for her belongings and built a proper bed frame. He even asked her once awkwardly what color flowers she liked best. "Lilacs," she said. The next morning, a bundle of them waited on the table. The town began to whisper. The woman Franklin Rourke rejected was now living with Jonas Calhoun. But Jonas didn't care. One evening, as rain tapped the windows, he said softly, "I think you saved me." She blinked. "How?" "I didn't know I was lonely till you made the silence feel different." She smiled. "I didn't know I could still matter." "You always did." Summer brought brightness, but also shadows. Franklin Rourke's barn caught fire. The town rushed to help, including Jonas. Margaret watched from the hill, heart clenched. She saw Franklin glance up at her once. Sweaty, ashamed, older somehow. He never approached. She never asked him to. By autumn, the town accepted her. Not because of Jonas, but because of her. She taught children to read under the oak near the church. She brought soup to widows. She became part of the place. Jonas, always the outsider, found himself smiling more, talking more, living more. One night, he carved something behind her back. A wooden comb, smooth as silk, with lilacs etched into the handle. "I made this," he said, handing it to her by the fire. Margaret held it, speechless. "It's not much. It's everything," she whispered. The next morning, he knelt beside the hearth. "Margaret Eloise Quinn," he said, voice rough, "you make this place feel like home. I don't have a ring yet, but I have hands that will build you anything, and a heart that won't ever turn away." She laughed through tears. "You already gave me more than a ring. You gave me back myself." They married in the meadow where lilacs grew wild. No lace. No church bells. Just her, him, and a handful of people who'd come to love them both. Jonas wore his best boots. Margaret wore lavender in her hair. They danced to a fiddle tune under the stars, his arms around her waist, her laughter warm as summer rain. Years later, they would sit by the fire, her head on his shoulder, telling their story to grandchildren who never tired of hearing it. "How did you fall in love with Grandma?" one child would ask. Jonas would smile. "I didn't fall," he'd say. "I stood still, and she found me." If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Margaret's incredible strength and the quiet kindness of Jonas Calhoun? Did Franklin Rourke get what he deserved, or do you think people like him ever change? Share your favorite moment, from the lilacs to the handmade comb, and tell us what part touched your heart the most. We love hearing from you, and your support helps us keep bringing these emotional journeys to life.